everybody. How we all doing? Hello, Malachi. Hello, Gamer G. Hello, Catalina Gearbox. Hello, Trans Girl Jade. Hello, Metatiahu. Hello, Paladin Lost. Hello, Snoogan. Hello, Malachi. Hello, non-binary superpowers. Hello, the Shreyax. Hello, BCC TV. Hello, Brendan. How we all doing today, folks? Hey, Resonate, how are you? That's right, you guys are getting a rare confluence of weekend streams. And folks, you should definitely go check out, give a subscribe to Slam House. Give a like to the video at the very goddamn least. And, yeah, they're graciously letting us use their synthwave beats for free. So go check them out, give them the subscribe and the like, all that stuff. You just vibing? I mean, for now, but we're about to start stream, during which we have a lot of content to go over. I've been saying I'm gonna do a night stream. I think tonight I'll actually do a night stream, just because there's just so much to go over. There's so much to go over. Like, I've been wanting to go over, like, a couple debates. I want to see if we can get through a Jubilee video today. We'll see if we can do that. But we have other things that need to take precedence before we get to some of that stuff. There's been an anti-trans segment that I would like to go through. Like some like evangelical propaganda that maybe I can shed some light on. Additionally, like there's so much stuff to talk about, y'all. And yeah, we got stuff to cover. I just watched a bit of the Dylan IRI debate. Well, I haven't. That's not even on my radar. I just want to go over the Dylan Destiny debate on Israel, but if Dylan also debated IRI, that needs to be on my radar as well. And I want to go over the Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones show, and I want to go over a lot of other things. So we have so many things to do. Did I hear the trans news from Scotland? No. We've got so much to do. Hey, Dusty Den. Yeah, someone gifted, I think, 5 memberships over in YouTube chat the other day. It was very, very kind of them. Would you like to? It's brief. No. I just finished talking about how we have so much to cover. If I think about it, I will add it to the docket for what we cover either later tonight or tomorrow. And we also have some other content to get to. Also, apparently, TYT hosted a candidate forum a couple days ago. And I would also like to, at some point, get to the Republican debates. So, that we missed, like the primary debate that we missed. Were you No, I was talking to all the other people who were talking about trans news from Scotland. Let's see. We are busy. Okay, and I also wanted to go over... I also want to just play some video games. I would like to just play some video games. I'd like to also go over more analog horror content. And also that church militant holy mackerel stuff that you guys wanted me to check out. There's a whole lot of stuff to go over, and I am feeling overwhelmed. Let's see. The D-Team Republican debates? Yeah, I mean, like, we don't need to go over it for any, like, actual political reason, really. Mostly we'd just be going over it to laugh at the candidates, because it's a pathetic crabs in a bucket scenario where all of the crabs are trying to like climb out off of each other's backs. Yeah. The stairs into the mall video. Yeah, there's a single video follow-up to that called Life of a Giant I'd like to go through, and I'd like to go through another season of Vintage 8, which has been on my mind since we went over the second season of that show. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Also, folks, we are now sitting at 9,666 followers over on Twitch. We're inching up to 10K. Since the transition earlier this year to using riverboat.gg, it's been a lot slower growth rate on Twitch. But I feel like we're starting to speed back up again, and it'll be cool to see that hit 5 digits. Let's go. And additionally, we're just climbing up on the YouTube. 3,220 subscribers. Let's go. Let's see what we can hit by the end of the year. I'm excited. Also, I'm going to be trying to get more videos out this week. So please go like and comment and do all the things you know help videos. Hey, Silver Shadow, you're in good company. We've got a lot of non-binary folks of all stripes here. Hey, KBS. Okay, and we will be playing a game during the Jubilee segment if we get there, but until then, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's go. These are pretty okay. Not product placement. I bought a case of these at Costco just to try different flavors of energy drinks. I mean, it's not great. It has 10 calories in it, though, and 200 milligrams of caffeine, so let's go. Still has kind of a problem with, like, the aftertaste, but, like, not the worst thing. What rules should I be aware of? I mean, the main rule, the main rule of thumb we have in my community, Silver Shadow, is just, be excellent to each other. Don't be an asshat. Like that's the main rule. I want everyone to be here for you and for each other. All those energy drinks have an aftertaste. I know. I just want I want like an energy drink that doesn't have like kind of a cloying remnant on the palate, you know? I mean, you don't have to be 18 plus, but you do have to be old enough to use Twitch. We have had some people come in and be like, "Hi, I'm 11 years old. Don't watch my content if you're not old enough to use YouTube or Twitch on your own." I think that's a reasonable rule of thumb. Like, I don't think my content is off limits to younger folks. I think younger folks know that the word fuck exists just fine. And I think that my content, while edgy-ish, is not on par with like a lady without any clothes on dangling her breasts in front of stream. I don't think they're necessarily age gated in the same way. Let's see. Gifting memberships is good practice. Praxis. I agree, Dusty Den, especially since it benefits me. Hey, Cleaver. I'm worried about that caffeine intake. 200 milligrams is like 2 or 3 regular coffees. Yeah, it means I will be functioning like a regular person. Let's see. Yes, the low cut cleavage shirt has returned. Have you heard of the energy drink called Pussy? No. Xanakill, thank you. Thank you for the well wishes. I hope you have a good time for however long you spend here. All right. Moving on, doing actual content now. Stop asking me about pussy. Which, as we all know, is a delicacy best enjoyed after dessert. Moving on. Folks, as you may or may not know, the United States is bad sometimes. And in fact, is currently being bad. I know this might come as a shock to a lot of you, but the United States is doing this little thing called vetoing UN Security Council resolutions. It's a popular pastime that the American government pursues in its foreign policy at the UN. And let's just take a look at what they're up to this time, the rascals. The little gents.
En contra.
Against.
So, this is the United States vetoing the resolution for a ceasefire. That the person who just talked, the president presiding over the proceedings, asked who wanted to vote against the ceasefire resolution, the call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Only guy to raise his hand.
Abstenciones.
Abstentions.
El resultado de la votación.
The result of the vote is as follows. 13 votes in favor, 1 against, 1 abstention.
El proyecto de...
The draft resolution has not been approved due to the veto of a permanent member of the Security Council.
Yep. So basically how the UN Security Council works is that any member of it can unilaterally torpedo any proposal. So yeah, it's not great, especially considering that, frankly, Biden's numbers are just absolutely sinking when it comes to millennials and young people. And I mean, news stories are coming out every day now, every day, about the atrocities that are happening in the Gaza Strip, right? And one of the stories coming out here is from an organization called Declassified UK. This is from a journalist named Matt Kennard, and he posted it. Stephen Donziger, who we've talked about on stream before, amplified this on social media. And yeah, I mean, let's just take a look at this, okay? Just real quick, the allegations he's making here.
There's a clear pattern that Israel is targeting the best and brightest of Gaza. They are going, as you said, they're going after everyone who might provide a way of living a human life in Gaza. So they're going after lawyers, they're going after medics, they're going after teachers and journalists. Yes, well.
And like one of the things about this is that it doesn't even necessarily have to be an articulated plan on Israel's part, right? It's just that conveniently all of the places that they target are schools, universities, hospitals. You know, the medical the medical professionals of Gaza, the academics of Gaza, the people designated as the ones to pass on knowledge and expertise. The people who work in these buildings that conveniently Israel calls Hamas strongholds, they're being wiped out. You know, there is evidence that they are targeting journalists. You know, this has been one of the deadliest conflicts for journalists ever. Over 70 of them have died, and there are numerous reports and kind of international investigations that kind of find that, hey, Israel most likely targeted these individuals. Most likely was able to identify that these individuals were journalists and fired on them anyway.
Well, I mean, one of the most, I mean, it's all so horrific, it's beyond words, but Al Jazeera was shut down in Israel, and then the day after, they bombed and killed the family of the Al Jazeera correspondent in Gaza. So that was a statement. It was saying, we will kill your family. They didn't even kill him, they killed his family. So I just want to, I think that this is part of what needs to change is the narrative is that this is not, none of these are mistakes, that they're targeting the best and brightest of Gaza because they want to destroy any remnants of human life in Gaza. They want to make it unable to live. So I just wanted you guys to talk about.
Yeah, it does seem, I have to agree with this guy's conclusion. It does seem like the project that's happening here is the destruction of any like physical infrastructure, any physical material that would allow Palestinians to return, but also the destruction of the social material of Gazans, you know, that would allow them to return and rebuild and create a functional society. You know, the goal is to tear them apart, not just physically, not just kill as many as possible, but to render them unable to exist as a coherent social bloc. Hey, Alice McGee.
About what you think Israel's goal is.
Well, actually, they also target the peace activists. And it's shocking, even those who call for peace, they're targeting them. For example, they targeted my friend Ahmed Abartima, the founder of the Great March of Return. He is my best friend, and he has always been one of the most vocal voices for the peaceful resistance, the unarmed.
And this is also true, by the way. Like, Israel does target peace activists because explicitly it cannot have peace. You know? It cannot condone peace. You know? Because, frankly, either way the peace goes, either Palestinians get a second state, or get a two-state solution, get their own state, which is unacceptable to Israelis, and specifically to hundreds of thousands of armed and violent settlers, or alternatively, they get integrated into Israel, which is also unacceptable to the state of Israel, as it conceptualizes itself as a Jewish state. If you integrated the Palestinians into it, it would cease to be majority Jewish, and that is seen as an unacceptable outcome by the far-right powers that are making the decisions within Israel, the fascist powers within Israel. So this is, it's not surprising that they're targeting peace activists. Yeah, guys, there are ads on Twitch. I don't know if you guys don't want to watch ads. You can come over to riverboat.gg. But if you're watching on Twitch, you're gonna get ads. I'm not stopping my content because you guys get ads. I'm sorry. And I also don't have control over how many ads, like, Twitch plays. I'm sorry. If I had my way, Twitch wouldn't play any ads, but that's not how that works. Yo, VCC TV, congrats on the 3-stream streak. You guys don't have to let me know. There's a thing that automatically tells me that ads are playing on Twitch. You only have to let me know if, like, I've told you guys I'm gonna break for you. No, it's okay. The back end tells me. All right. So, like, on top of this, right? Like, you have targeted killings of, like, the academics and social facilitators within Gaza, as well as the material buildings within Gaza, and the U.S. is still sitting back and vetoing ceasefire resolutions in the UN. And in fact, it is now being called out by some of the most well-known and well-respected organizations on the planet. Doctors Without Borders here, issuing a statement: "We are devastated by the UN Security Council's failure to adopt a resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza, blocked by a solitary veto from the United States. Quote, by vetoing this resolution, the U.S. stands alone in casting its vote against humanity." I mean, like, this is pretty incredible stuff. Yeah. This is the following message from the executive director of Doctors Without Borders. As, quote, "As bombs continue to rain down on Palestinian civilians and cause widespread destruction, the U.S. has once again used its power to block an attempt by the UN Security Council to demand a ceasefire in Gaza. By vetoing this resolution, the U.S. stands alone in casting its vote against humanity. The U.S. veto stands in sharp contrast to the values it professes to uphold. By continuing to provide diplomatic cover for the ongoing atrocities in Gaza, the U.S. is signaling that international humanitarian law can be applied selectively, and that the lives of some people matter less than the lives of others. Israel has continued to indiscriminately attack civilians and civilian structures, impose a siege that amounts to collective punishment for the entire population of Gaza, force mass displacement, and deny access to vital medical care and humanitarian assistance. The U.S. continues to provide political and financial support to Israel as it prosecutes its military operations, regardless of the terrible toll on civilians. For humanitarians to be able to respond to the overwhelming needs, we need a ceasefire now. The U.S. veto makes it complicit in the carnage in Gaza." Weird wording. Usually it said lives matter more than others. Well, it's they're talking about the lives of Palestinians in Gaza. The U.S. is signaling that it cares less about the people in Gaza than it does about the lives of other people. So I guess the phrasing is a little bit different than, like, the norm, but it's not that far out of the norm. Additionally, like, I mean, for those of you who are like, well, you know, but the people within you know, the West Bank, yeah, they're just crying wolf. They're just big babies, you know. Matt Bender found this from an Israeli journalist named Nir Gonartz, or Gontars. There we go, Gontars. And this is a news story about a Palestinian in the West Bank who's arrested specifically for blocking Jewish colleagues on Facebook and Instagram. They basically, the Israeli authorities are trying to claim that this was an act of anti-Semitism, that this was a dereliction of, like, some sort of imagined national responsibility in the West Bank, or like a sign of potential terrorist radicalization. and this is to them, considered a crime. Also, consider the fact that in the West Bank, if you are arrested, you can be held indefinitely without any formal charges. So this Palestinian medical student can just be held forever without any recourse. However, to top it off, she didn't even block her colleagues. She deactivated her account on Facebook and Instagram. For deactivating her account on Facebook and Instagram, she is now being held in detention, accused of crimes, of hate crimes against Jewish colleagues. So, in case people are trying to pull the, it's not an apartheid state, that's just bullshit. Additionally, we have an Israeli study now. This is very interesting. Finds civilians make up 61% of Gaza deaths from airstrikes, meaning that every time Israel has dropped a bomb, 61% of the people who die have been civilians. Which I would even say is perhaps generous. The analysis conducted by Yagil Levy, a sociology professor at the Open University of Israel, and published by Israeli newspaper Haaretz, found that in the last 3 weeks of Operation Swords of Iron, the total death toll stood at 6,747 to 6,747, 4,594 of whom were civilians. This marks a roughly 20% increase in civilian deaths when compared to 3 other Israeli bombing campaigns that took place in 2012, 2021, and 2022. In all of those campaigns, the civilian death toll stood at around 40%. Israel's Shield and Arrow campaign, which took place in May of 2023, registered a slightly lower figure for civilian deaths at 33%. So basically, they've doubled the rate of civilian killing. Between their previous bombing campaign in May of 2023 and this one, they've basically doubled the rate at which they are killing civilians. The analysis was released as heavy fighting raged throughout the Gaza Strip on Sunday. Those on the ground say Israeli forces are coming up against heavy armed resistance, even in the north of the Strip, where troops have been conducting operations for over 6 weeks. So again, this is why it is now becoming the deadliest conflict for children of this century so far. Rami Ismail, who's an amazing figure within the video game industry, created the game Nuclear Throne, if any of you are familiar with that. Posted this, and I thought it was a really salient point. These photos will be in the history books, and kids will ask, but didn't people learn from the previous genocides what it looks like? And we will have to answer, people didn't recognize what they were seeing because the photos weren't black and white. And that is, frankly, true. That's true. I mean, we've been seeing these more and more of these pictures. They just stripped civilians down, and I don't know if you guys know this, but in previous conflicts, prisoners of war weren't stripped down of all of their clothes and herded into the backs of trucks. That's not that would actually be considered a form of war humiliation. It would be possibly a prosecutable war crime. It's not this isn't normal. This is not the protocol for treating prisoners of war. And the fact that, again, many of these people have been confirmed to be civilians or even journalists. Do we have any confirmation that these trucks weren't delivering these people to a mass grave? Snugan, as far as we know, the answer to that is no. The IDF claims that they detained these people and then released them later, after an undefined amount of time. But what's worth noting here in these images, these obviously being new ones, take note of like the surrounding terrain. And I just want to play like a few seconds of a Sky News interview. Because, of course, these pictures are making the rounds, and people are wondering, hey, what is this? What is this horrific image? What are these videos? So, here's a Sky News broadcast. Just throw this up here.
Showing dozens of men, some bound and blindfold, stripped to their underwear, and we believe now at least some of that filmed by IDF members. What was the purpose of the exercise that was going on at that point in that part of Gaza?
First of all, remember it's the Middle East and it's warmer here, and especially during the day when it's sunny, it's to be asked to take off your shirt. It might not be pleasant, but it's not the end of the world.
Showing dozens.
So, when asked, why were all of these Palestinians stripped down to their underwear, his response was, it's just so hot in the Middle East. And I want you all to know, this is just a lie. This is just a lie to dupe you. You specifically, Western viewers. If you are in like the US or the UK and you're like, oh yeah, I mean the Middle East has a lot of deserts, it's hot, so I guess that makes sense. They're banking on that response from you, because I just real quick here, what exactly was the weather like in Gaza? Let's just take a look real quick. It's not like there's not any weather reports we could check. You can literally Google weather report in Gaza. And wow, look at that. At night, it gets to 53 degrees Fahrenheit. It's just 20 degrees above freezing. If you don't have clothes on, you are going to have a bad time and probably have some health concerns without any clothing. But how hot is it in the daytime? Is it super, super hot? So hot that someone would need to take off their shirt in order to ventilate themselves? No. The high temperature tomorrow is 75 degrees. It's in the low 70s, mid 60s, which is relatively cool. That would be considered a very cool spring day. What is 53 degrees in non-freedom units? I don't know. I don't know that. Why are you asking me? Why are you asking me to convert into your crazy units? Fuck, that's cold to have no clothes on? Yeah, no, it's super cold. 53 degrees is 11 degrees Celsius. Yeah.
My sub ran out, and that can't happen.
Sophie, thank you for getting a tier 1 sub. I really appreciate the support. Yeah, no, like, I mean, like, even at 70 or 75 or the high 60s, mid 60s, that's pretty cold to be walking around with no clothing on. To, like, just go outside in your underwear. Hey, Fenry. So I just need you guys to know that the IDF spokespeople that go on TV in the UK and the US think that you are chumps. They think that you are fucking idiots who can't even be bothered to like look at, oh, how hot is it in the Gaza Strip? The answer is not very hot, actually. but like even if you are like, oh, okay, well, it's actually 20 degrees Celsius or something, like that's still not take your shirt off weather. Like, and even if it was hot, like, yeah, why are you stripping them down? That's still weird. And I just wanted to play, I have 2 more clips to go over for this. But definitely one of the biggest disappointments throughout a lot of this coverage has been seeing like the intractability of a lot of politicians. And here's Bernie Sanders. I know that, like, and you all know this. I've been one of the big proponents of like the wheels of government turn slowly, and I do believe that they are still turning. But the fact that we are this far into this conflict, and this is something that Bernie Sanders is going on television to say, is deeply disappointing, man.
In terms of a permanent ceasefire, I don't know how you could have a permanent ceasefire with Hamas, who has said before October 7th and after October 7th that they want to destroy Israel. They want a permanent war. I don't know how you have a permanent ceasefire with an attitude like that. In terms of
I mean, like, it doesn't matter if you don't know how at the moment. You find a way to make it happen. And I mean, guys, one of the most disappointing parts about this is that AIPAC actually tweeted this out. Thank you, Senator Sanders, for your strong opposition to a permanent ceasefire with Hamas. Like, I've been saying this for a hot minute now, but I think that the degree to which Israeli lobbying has entered American politics has been very subtle and unnoticed and accepted within the Democratic Party for a very long time. And now I believe that they are able to basically call up, like, organizations like AIPAC or Defy are able to call up people like Bernie Sanders, or even call up Joe Biden, and say, hey, if you have this type of language in your communications, we are going to drop $200 million, $300 million into your elections in 2024, specifically to get you out of office. And I think that there are a lot of Democrats who are terrified both of losing their positions or threatening effectively that sort of political catastrophe on other members of their party who are in more vulnerable positions, right? And rather than tell these people, as they should, fuck off, they're going, oh yes, sir, of course, sir, anything you want, sir. And I think the marching orders have come down for the vast majority of Congress that they can't call for a ceasefire. Otherwise, their positions are going to be in jeopardy. And I think that there are some people who are perhaps immune to these types of threats. I know that Ryan Grimm has been doing like a media rotation lately, and talked about how AIPAC had approached AOC with like an offer of like $10 million or something if she just agreed to like meet and talk with them with no other caveats, and she turned that down. I know that there are some people in Congress who still have integrity, but I don't think Joe Biden could stop the mayhem now anyway, even if he threatened to yank all their funding. Well, that's the other thing, Purple Dragon Guy. It is possible that the United States has lost the ability to kind of like unilaterally pull in Israel. I do think that that is entirely possible, but I also think that a large reason why Israeli politicians are so dismissive of like so dismissive of the United States stepping in is because they know that they have the investments already in lobbying to and like super PAC funding to effectively threaten them into inaction, you know? So I think that like part of their boldness in speaking out about how they can effectively ignore the asks from the Biden administration is due to the fact that they have spent like the last decade building up this political capital to spend. So I mean, that's my analysis of the situation. It could be like some other set of variables that I'm not aware of, but that's kind of my conclusion based on what I've seen, right? Like it seems to me like behind the scenes the Biden administration is doing a lot to try and maneuver the US into a position that will pressure Israel to stop, but they can't explicitly do it and they can't say it out loud because they'll trigger like this cavalcade of reprisals in 2024. That just seems to be my analysis here. The same as the not all cops rhetoric when it comes to politicians in general. If one is awful and nobody stops them, all of them are awful. True. And this is why generally you shouldn't have political faves, you know? You should only have political, I guess, political convenience, maybe? Like, be suspicious of all politicians, but don't, like, adhere to one like they're the second coming of Christ. And that brings me to the last clip, and this is from CNN. They had on a Middle East watchdog. His name is Fawaz Gerges. He's a professor of Middle East politics in London. And basically, he spends 5 minutes just, I think, doing a pretty good job breaking down what all of this means. What is happening at this point in time. And he was talking with Christian Amanpour, and you all know I love Christian Amanpour. And here we go. I think he says some things that are pretty relevant.
I had never seen the region as boiling, as implosive, as angry. There is so much hatred, there is so much rage, there is so much anger against both Israel and the United States. My fear is that Gaza could easily become a time bomb that really implodes regional stability. I cannot tell you the extent of popular anger and resentment and rage against the United States.
Yeah, so to kind of give a little bit of additional context here, right? Saudi Arabia is seen as one of the the premier economic power in the Middle East, right? And it was going to have peace talks with Israel, essentially, right? That all got scuttled by the October 7th attacks and Israel invading Gaza. And the issue is that a lot of people see Saudi Arabia, and a lot of people in the Middle East see Saudi Arabia as kind of like the leader when it comes to, you know, a lot of different aspects of Middle Eastern society when it comes to leading kind of the Muslim world. And when October 7th happened, there was a lot of anger within Saudi Arabia and the wider Middle East, and Saudi Arabia has not really responded at all to this outside of basically trying to pressure Israel into kind of like calming down, getting to a ceasefire, but it's also feeling domestic pressure to do something to help Palestinians. And a lot of what is seen as helping Palestinians in this case might be like military support to Hamas, or might be intervening on behalf of Palestinians, right? And so you have these conversations happening in Saudi Arabia. You also have these conversations happening in Iran and Lebanon and Egypt. And the issue is, most of these countries have already resolved their issues with Israel, or come to a place where like it's relatively resolved. And well, that's the thing. That's the thing, Build-A-Dog. Saudi Arabia was trying to normalize relations with Israel, in part so that it could get some sort of defensive agreement with the United States. That's kind of one of its short-term goals in order to future-proof it and its position in the region, at least for like another 50 years or so. Because Saudi Arabia has tensions with other countries in the Middle East. So essentially what's happening here with Gaza is that it is kind of becoming this point of polarization within the Middle East, where different countries are seeing it as both an opportunity and also as a position they cannot be just kind of neutral on. And it's serving as kind of this wedge issue for the geopolitics of the region. And yeah, Iran is the other side of the coin, because they're also looking at this and seeing it as an opportunity to potentially like destabilize the Israeli region, and also stand up for the Palestinians. It's a PR win for them in the Middle East. There's a lot of different elements going on here that makes it very, very complicated, and I'm giving you like a stupid basic bitch overview of it, but it's something to note that effectively there is an immense amount of frustration around the United States being unable to rein in Israel, and this perception of Israel as kind of this mad dog that won't be stopped in the near future. It won't satisfy itself with just Palestinians.
I ask you, how is it that this catastrophe was able to happen? Is there, I mean, obviously Hamas committed it, but did the US take its eye off the ball?
Let me be direct. Biden's foreign policy does not differ very much from Trump's foreign policy. For the past 2 years, this administration has not made any major investment in either trying to stop the building of Jewish settlements, or even to try to really bring about the establishment of a Palestinian state. It pays lip service to the idea of a two-state solution. What did the Biden administration do in the past 1 year? It has tried to build up on Trump's deal of the century, bring about normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. And
so, yes, this is, by the way, the normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel is a good thing. Like, normalizing relations in the region is, generally speaking, a good thing. But this guy is right insofar as, like, the priority has been that, and not stopping the illegal building of settlements, or pressuring or spending money on trying to end the discrimination towards Palestinians in the West Bank. It has not been on the ball when it comes to pursuing this two-state solution, right? And I would disagree that Trump wasn't meaningfully worse when it comes to like U.S. Palestinian Israel relations, right? Because like Trump was so pro-Israel that like he condoned the annexation of like the Golan Heights. He has like neighborhoods named after him in the settlements.
I figured out why Ben Shapiro wanted Steven Crowder under contract. To have him star in Lady Ballers.
Thank you for the $5 dono. And not only that, there's this idea that Trump was instrumental in moving the capital to Jerusalem, or moving the U.S.'s defined capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is a move to pacify evangelicals in the United States. But it's true that Biden hasn't really reversed any of those policies. There's a lot of terrible foreign policy that Trump did that Biden has done very little to reverse.
And why? Because in the back of the mind of the Biden administration and the Netanyahu government, normalization with Saudi Arabia would mean the end of the Arab-Israeli conflict. The underlying, Christian, the underlying idea in the administration, in the Biden administration, and Benjamin Netanyahu, is that the Palestinians can be managed, the Palestinians can be controlled, the Palestinians can be subjugated. Why should we invest in the peace process?
So the United States, you're basically saying, and we've observed, thought that it...
Which, by the way, is a miscalculation on the Biden administration's part, because the Biden administration is under kind of this 90s era delusion that the Israeli state is at all open to a two-state solution. It's not. It's not open to a two-state solution. It's not open to a one-state solution. It needs this. It frankly, like, Israel needs this weird gray zone for Palestinians to live in, because either they have to like genocide and ethnically cleanse them, which is what they are currently doing, or they have to maintain this strange status quo. There's no other option for them, really, that they view as acceptable anyway.
It could, A, take its eye off the Palestinian ball and outsource that to these normalization deals between Israel and the Arab countries with which it's not at war. And the same, you could say, for the Arab countries. What has Saudi Arabia done or the UAE done? So what do you think the US should do now? What is this saying? And what should the Arab leaders do?
Christian, anyone who's interested in peace in the Holy Land, anyone, should recognize that the so-called two-state solution that the United States has been talking about, has been really paying lip service, has not really produced anything. In fact, while the United States has been talking about a two-state solution, what has been happening on the ground, Christian? You have now almost 1 million settlers, 1 million who live in occupied Palestinian lands on the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Israel was in a race, is in a race against time to steal Palestinian land, to colonize the land. So in fact, the talk about the two-state solution has brought about the consolidation of Israel's military occupation. And guess what? The undermining and the weakening of the Palestinian Authority.
So what happens now?
Israel will never respond.
How does the United States continue its fierce loyalty, which will never change, to Israel, and finally move towards, because it's only going to be an internationalist movement, this. It's not going to be the parties who does it.
Christian, if you ask me, and I'm sorry, I really have no trust in American foreign policy anymore. I have studied American foreign policy for many years. Not because some American policymakers are not decent people, but because they really don't have the guts and the moral courage to tell Israel is enough. That American interest.
This is true. This is 100% true. Also, Build the Dog, like, I can give you the basic rundown of like the Abraham Accords, which is basically just that they normalize relations between Israel and Morocco, Sudan, Bahrain, and the UAE. Basically, like, reopening up diplomatic communication and possible economic activity, so like trading, etc. And in exchange, Israel agreed to at the very least, temporarily freeze its plans to annex the West Bank. Yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's basically it. And it is also kind of a groundwork for a potential local alliance against Iran. So a lot of this is basically building a power block that could operate against Iran if Iran was ever like to pose like a regional threat, if that makes sense. That is the very basic explainer. It's more complicated than that. And also, yeah, it has the US like selling arms to like all the countries involved, of course. So let's finish this.
And I'm talking as an American now. Our interests lie in a stable, peaceful Middle East. A peaceful, stable Middle East requires the Palestinians, allowing the Palestinians to have self-determination, to end Israel's occupation, to establish two states living side by side in peace.
Many who support Palestinian statehood are also shocked. They believe Hamas not only created the most depraved attack on civilians that we've seen for a long, long time. I mean, deliberate rapes, deliberate shooting in the genitals, killings of children, kidnappings of old people, Holocaust survivors and civilians, the very civilians who actually care about the Palestinians, those who are in the kibbutz, etc. Has Hamas finally and fatally miscalculated? And I'm also asking, because this is what, this is what others are asking, if the Palestinians really want a leadership that can engage with the rest of the world,
Christian,
has Hamas not put itself out of the calling, out of the bidding?
The Palestinians want dignity. The Palestinians want emancipation. The Palestinians want the end of Israeli occupation. If you ask me now, who speaks for the Palestinians? And it's sad to say it, Hamas now speaks for the Palestinians.
Still.
Hamas now speaks for Palestinians' aspiration.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the number one thing that routinely boosts support for Hamas, which prior to this conflict was extraordinarily low. The number one thing that boosts support for Hamas among Palestinian civilians in like the Gaza Strip is Israeli bombing, is Israeli military action against them. Because again, Hamas is the only like potential military bulwark in that area. Like if you want to radicalize a group of people, start bombing them. If you want to radicalize a group of people, start killing their families. That creates a lot of radicals. Well, and the other thing, Sophie, is that that's not true that Hamas is the only group that opposes anything Israeli is doing. There are other opposition groups. It's just that those opposition groups have historically been peaceful activist groups, and those organizations have been targeted for assassination by Israel for decades now, because Israel is not interested in a peaceful, activist-led Gaza. They're interested in using the violent, militaristic segment of Hamas in order to justify its growing fascistic policies. And that being the case, if there's only one or two real, like, military wings operating in Gaza, and you're like a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old who's just seen your entire family die in a wall of fire from an IDF tank, well, what are you going to do? Because you can't leave Gaza. All of the borders are shut. You can't, there's nowhere for you to go, so what do you do? It sounds really bad to say, though, that Hamas represents Palestinians as a whole. Yeah, no, that is untrue. But like within the Gaza Strip, there's no other authority left over the Palestinians. There's not like a Palestinian refugee society that can like offer statements on behalf of Palestinians that are trying to shelter in place in the southern part of the Strip. So, yeah, it's frustrating, and a lot of this, there's a not insignificant amount of this that is born out of and supported by the cowardice of American politicians who have been bought and paid for by AIPAC for so long they can't imagine having a spine. I'm looking at you, John Fetterman. Like the fact that John Fetterman like got into office and immediately does this, like, oh my god. Oh my god. Like, and he just won't stop either. You know? And with that, let's cover this Dylan Burns Destiny debate. Because I'm interested here. I think I know Dylan's position, which is that, you know, occupying, you know, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank is bad. Let's see what how this convo goes, I guess.
I wanted to talk to you about the Golan Heights, if you wanted to talk about that quick. I can't hear you. Give me a moment.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Jesus. I don't know if this mic is going out or the mixer is, or the XLR cable, or your mom. Okay. I'm so sorry. Oh, yeah. I've been just working, studying, reading. You want to talk about the Golan Heights. What's up?
Yeah, well, not just the Golan Heights. I wanted to ask you a few things. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is about the settlements, because as far as I know, you're like against the settlements, yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, because we had this interaction about a UN resolution that was passed. And there was two parts of the UN resolution. The first part of it was
I don't know to what degree Destiny is anything. Frankly, Sophie, like dude will argue just to argue, and will just say shit to say shit.
The condemnation of the continued expansion of settlements, and it specifically had to do with that in the Golan Heights. And one second, the second part had to do, well, it was basically settlements, and then more specifically settlements in the Golan Heights. And you said that the resolution was stupid, and because the Arab states don't want the Palestinians anyway. Could you like expand to me exactly like why the UN resolution was stupid?
Wait, can you link it? I thought that this also was a reaffirmation of Resolution 242. That's generally what I was referring to. Is that wrong, or did I fuck this up? Or you can DM me the tweet and I can look at it again real quick.
Okay, I can DM you the tweet and I can DM you the resolution stuff, so you remember what resolution it is. One moment. This one right here. And here has here's all the information on the resolution.
I'm gonna make this small and the game big.
I love you, like, and be careful.
And if you want to search specifically in that UN document about where it's a big document about a bunch of different resolutions. It is down like I think like 7 or 8 paragraphs. It starts by the terms of the occupied Syrian Golan.
Didn't this also have to do with the territories of like the West Bank and the Gaza Strip as well?
Well, there's different parts of it. There's part of it that has to do with specifically desisting from changes to the character of the Golan Heights, the currently occupied Golan Heights, like its demographics, its institutional structures, etc.
We're playing RimWorld. If you guys want a character, just
here,
gift me 5
and
subs.
don't make an attempt to change the demographics of the area, which would make it easier for Israel to annex it.
Sure. I mean, I broadly agree with like not doing settlements. I just think that any resolution talking about like, oh, like Israel needs to give back all this territory is just like retarded. Like nobody, it's not like a realistic solution.
So
yeah, go ahead.
This is why I was confused, and this is why I wanted to understand your objection to it, because as far as I know, you've always been against the settlements, And as far as I know, you want the Israelis eventually to come to a deal with the Arab states. So I didn't understand why a UN resolution, which the only two opponents of it was the United States and Israel, I think, at least when it comes to the Golan part, the second part, I think it included the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, like a bunch of smaller nations, and Hungary, and Canada, I think. I was confused because it seemed to be in line with what you've always supported, which is stopping the expansion of settlements, because it's just going to make it much harder to make a deal, and it just increases the territory that the Palestinians won't be able to live on, increasing the amount of stateless people.
Yeah, I'm opposed to the expansion of settlements. I just don't know why people are trying to make like large agreements on this, and then trying to say like also in this like, oh, and Israel should do all of these things, like give back all of the, I don't even know who you'd give it back to, all of the conquered territory or whatever. I just don't like these like really broad resolutions that are.
Well, there's different parts of the resolution, right? For example, the occupied Syrian Golan part, there was only 2 people voted against it, and it was the United States and Israel. Whereas the other part that specifically had to do with Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories, East Jerusalem, and the Syrian Golan, that had more votes against it. Canada, Hungary, Israel, the Marshall Islands, because it was more expansive and it covered more issues, including the West Bank and Jerusalem, which caused Canada and Hungary to jump off the ship, where they more agreed with, yeah, they shouldn't be settling in the Golan Heights. And so this did give America more selection on where it could agree with Israel, where it could disagree with Israel, but we just agreed with Israel on both counts.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm opposed to the settlements, but I think that like any change in Israeli policy, I think has to come with like agreements with other parties. Like it can't just be Israel unilaterally pulling back from here or doing this particular thing. Like, let's say Israel unilaterally pulls out of, or well, I'm saying unilateral, I don't know if it's really unilateral, but Israel is through UN condemnation pulls back from the Golan Heights, and then the Golan Heights just becomes another area by which Syria or Hezbollah decides to just start bombing Israel again, right? Well, I was like, well, what the fuck? What do we just get for this? What's the point of this? Like, it's easy to do.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. I don't think Israel should just tomorrow pull out of the Golan Heights. It probably would just become a hub for terror groups, considering the current state of Syria. What I do think, though, is that the more that they place settlers in there, the more settlers move in, or the more provocation settlers have with the UN area where the UN soldiers are, that separates where the Syrian soldiers are and the Israeli soldiers are. The more that occurs and the less Israel does to discourage that, the harder it's going to be to eventually make a deal that is beneficial, well, not beneficial, but acceptable, tolerable to all sides. Because the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to be for Israel to ever make the decision to pull out, which means they're going to have less to offer at the negotiating table. It's going to make it harder to come to a deal.
And I definitely understand that, and I'm sympathetic towards that. But on the side of the Israeli argument, their argument is going to be the only way we've ever been able to get peace with anybody is through conquest and might. And if we don't settle, if we don't have this territory, if we don't do things to make it hard for other people, then they have absolutely no reason to negotiate with us. Let's say that in the future, let's say Israel wants to come to some strong agreement.
Okay, but I think when it comes to the Golan Heights, it's a little different because Israel has offered the Golan Heights before, but the Syrians didn't accept the terms. They didn't think they were tolerable because they wanted no Syrian soldiers, no Syrian bases. I mean, no Israeli soldiers, no Israeli bases, no Israeli air control. And now that position has changed because the Likud is in power, and since then Israel has decided to annex the Golan Heights. So I agree.
Well, when you
that
say now the position has changed, now the position has changed to what?
The Israeli government position has changed to how they should treat the Golan Heights. Now they treat it as sovereign Israeli territory, even though no other state except the United States, which happened during the Trump administration, acknowledges that.
Sure. But I'm saying that, like, from Israel's point of view, there's no reason to give this up without, like, a strong negotiation on the table. Right? Do you agree with that or no?
I understand that there's no reason for them to give it up.
Okay.
But the more they settle, the harder it's going to be to ever give it up, period. And they won't be able to make the same offers they made before, making peace less attainable.
Sure, I understand that, but it only gets better for Israel as they continue to settle the territory, right? It only gives them a stronger bargaining position by doing that. And if they feel like they have enemies to the north and the only thing they recognize is threat of annexation or military might, then that's in Israel's prerogative to do this. And if nobody else wants to negotiate, if they didn't in the past, right? They didn't even want, yeah.
It's harder for me to think it's going to be a stronger negotiating position because at a certain point, once they've done enough settlement, there's not going to be a negotiation about returning the Golan Heights. They're just going to keep the Golan Heights. I don't think that the Likud's agenda is to move in a bunch of settlers and then leverage much of the settlers being their far-right base, leverage those people who support them and keep them in power, leverage them against the Syrians to get a better deal and then eventually pull them out. I think their goal is to move in settlers and then never let go of the Golan Heights ever. I think that would make much more sense considering like Likud agenda.
Possibly, I might agree with you there. I would argue historically this isn't relevant, but historically Israel was willing to demolish settlements when they made peace with Israel and give them back to Sinai. And Israel, under I think it was Sharon, not Netanyahu. I think it was under Sharon, unilaterally disengaged from Gaza and they pulled back settlements from there. So historically they've been able to do it. Now, in both of those cases, it wasn't. Is it what 25,000 settlers in the Golan Heights? It wasn't that many people. But I mean, Israel has the capability of doing it. I just don't see how I don't like going to Israel and saying like, you need to do this, you need to do that. Meanwhile, like there's like terrorist groups that are attacking them constantly. And they're like, okay, well, we need something from them. We're not just going to disengage or stop moving here. We are going to move to annex the territory if somebody else doesn't like do something about it. Yeah.
But continued expansion of settlements isn't going to decrease the amount of terrorism or decrease tensions or make Israelis safer. It's just going to make those settlers, they're going to put them in positions where they're more in danger. They're going to put more Israeli soldiers in the Golan Heights in danger. And it's going to end up making it harder for Israel to come to terms that makes it more peaceful for everyone. So I don't necessarily think that the settlement of the Golan Heights is benefiting Israel as much as controlling the Golan Heights territorially is benefiting Israel's security, which I can understand that. That's much easier to understand.
I actually think I 95% agree with you. I think that Israel right now is conducting themselves like the year is 1968, and they're worried about every country invading them again. Like it feels like Israel acts a little bit more on edge than they need to. That being said, if anybody
can I ask you a question? How much of that do you think is Netanyahu, and how much of that do you think would be the case no matter who was in power? Because I think if it was Benny Gantz in there, I don't think the position of like what they're doing right now would change that much tremendously.
Well, yeah, but it's because probably it's largely in provocation to Palestinian attacks. That's why the general sentiment in Israel is, fuck these people, we don't want to work with them. And broadly speaking, I think that's the feeling around basically the entire Arab world. Nobody cares about Palestinians anymore. The citizens kind of do. But for the most part, people have kind of moved on. That's why the only people supporting the Palestinians now are fucking Islamic jihadists. It's Iran, it's Hezbollah, it's the Houthis, and then it's whatever Hamas crazy shit is happening. And even the PA is pretty fucking crazy in Israel. So yeah, their support has become increasingly radicalized. A lot of the other Arab nations have taken a step back or are bilaterally negotiating peace with Israel. And increasingly, yeah, the Palestinians are finding themselves with only more and more radical allies. So when Israel looks at that, like, yeah, there needs to be like a real conversation about if Israel wants to give this back, what are they going to get in exchange for it? Who's going to, like, what are we doing about Iran? Because that's the big fucking deal. Or at the very least, like Syria and Lebanon. Yeah.
Let's be clear, we're talking about the Golan Heights here. This isn't a question of giving the Golan Heights back to the Palestinians. This is a question of giving the Golan Heights back to the Syrians.
Yeah, but I don't know if they're. You can tell me here. I don't know historically. Like, what would the chances be if the Syrian government got back the Golan Heights? What are the chances that somebody like Hezbollah like moves in there and uses it as a base of operations? And then what are the chances that Assad would even be able to control that situation?
That's the two things that I wanted to bring up. This is why I'm not in favor of Israel giving back the Golan Heights right now, but I am in favor of them stopping settlement. Because I don't think the current status of the Syrian civil war or just Assad's brutality, even though I think that's less of a concern for the Israeli government considering the other actors in the region they're willing to work with, I don't think it would be beneficial for Israel. I don't think it would be necessarily that beneficial for the Syrians.
Wait. Isn't Destiny incredibly racist? He has said a lot of racist things, yes. Because a lot of the Arab states don't have anywhere near the infrastructure required to have 2 million Gazans suddenly migrate to their countries. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Just had to catch up on chat real quick. Oh, Salmon Moose, that means a lot to me. I'm glad you enjoy watching me for my content. Paranoia politics, yeah. Catch up. Chris Huggins, if you sent a $10 tip, I didn't see it anywhere. Yeah, Neptune. Fenry wanted to join the ranks of the Rimmers, the Rimworld crew.
I think it would probably just be filled with terror groups very quickly. As actually happened early in the Syrian civil war, which made the UN peacekeepers flee the area between the Israeli government and the Syrian government. But what I do think is that the more settlers they put there, the harder it's going to come to a deal. And in the long term, no matter how the Syrian civil war ends, whether it's an Assad's government, whether it's a free... Yeah?
Someone said, by one tier 5 sub if you can name one Israeli city besides Jerusalem or Tel Aviv. Does the West Bank count? What about like Bethlehem or Ramallah or I think Haifa, Jaffa? These are districts of Tel Aviv. Fuck you. Give me my shit. Oh, Lod, LOD is one. Fuck you. Give me my tier 5 sub, motherfucker. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
The most fun I've been having learning more and more about Israel is just learning fun Hebrew words.
Yeah.
Like shmekel. It's great.
I didn't know. I'm going to be totally honest. I didn't know that the Israeli currency was actually called shekels. I thought that was just like a Nazi fucking meme. I didn't know even today they're still called new shekels.
It is shekels.
Jesus. Okay, sorry. Keep going.
But in the
what? I'm not gonna lie. I feel like that's such a basic thing to not know. When formulating opinions about this. I'm sorry. Oh my god. I mean, it makes me want to disregard a lot of this conversation, not gonna lie.
The long term, when Israel eventually comes to the table with whatever future Syrian government that is, hopefully not Assad's, if there are settlers in the Golan Heights that number 100,000, 200,000 instead of the 20 to 25,000 that currently are in the Golan Heights, it's going to be 10 times harder for them to come to a settlement, especially if those settlers or the parties that those settlers support have political influence in maybe not a Likud coalition, but any coalition.
Sure. But then that would be, then Israel would say, okay, well, negotiate with us now then before it happens. Because the pressure is mounting. We're going to keep moving settlers in. So negotiate. You still don't want to negotiate? Okay, we'll see if you can get a then.
But the problem is that the current government doesn't want to ever negotiate its release because it believes that the Golan Heights is sovereign Israeli clay. Do you disagree that Israel formally annexed the Golan Heights and then Donald Trump's presidency acknowledged it,
which is stupid, yeah. But I mean, like, Israel also...
And if any government was to really believe that, it would be Netanyahu's.
Sure, but Zionists also have historically recognized that Jerusalem is like the sole right to Jewish people, but there have been multiple deals on the table that have like split East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem and made administrative districts, but like internationally, blah, blah, blah. So like...
I'm not saying that it would be impossible for any Israeli government to make this deal. I am saying that this specific government probably would never make that deal because they don't want to make that deal. And if continued settlement expansion happens, it's going to make it harder for any government to make that deal.
Sure. Here's what I would say. Stopping or pulling out the settlements from the Golan Heights serves zero strategic or geopolitical interest whatsoever, I think, for Israel. Increasing them there creates mounting pressure for... I don't even know if Lebanon exists as a fucking government or if it's just Hezbollah. Or Syria, which I don't know if that government exists right now or if it's just a collection of fractured terror groups as the country tries to rebuild itself, right? But until these two countries, at the very least, are willing to create some sort of agreement or some sort of security, whatever, with Israel, I don't think Israel has any motivation whatsoever to say, like, okay, we're going to go ahead and stop the settlements and start to pull them out and blah, blah, blah. I just don't see... Like, maybe morally it's the right thing to do, but, like, strategically,
I do get what he's saying here, which is that logistically dismantling the degree of settlements that they have in the West Bank is a colossal task and is such a large task that it would perhaps preclude any potential two-state solution that would try to force those settlements out. So I understand what he's saying from that point, but like... We do know that they've dismantled settlements in the past. That's a thing they did in the Gaza Strip. That we know that they can do these things. The issue is, are they willing to do those things? And I think that currently the answer is no. The issue with the West Bank is that the West Bank is way larger than the Golan Heights, right?
think that having more people in the Golan Heights, if it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is just to grab as much territory as possible, then there's zero motivation to stop settlement expansion. If you just think that the territorial hold is security, and they hold the Golan Heights, whether it's respected or not respected, that's security. If that's your primary goal, and it's considering Netanyahu is the security candidate, that wouldn't surprise me that much, then I would understand not wanting that.
Sure,
But
I
if
think
your
it's. I think the
goal is-
aspirations are territorial. At this point, I'm sorry, I love my Zionists. Security is a pretty weak argument. It's 2023. We got nukes, we got planes, we got all sorts of shit going on. I don't think the security argument for the Golan, like, is it 1955? Are they going to park artillery there and start shooting? Like, I think the security argument is weak, and Israel makes it. Yeah.
The Golan Heights was used as a base of operations to launch an invasion of Israel during the Yom Kippur. Well, no, it wasn't during the Yom Kippur War. It was the 1967 war, and then it was tried to be retaken by the Syrians.
Sure, I understand that, but I'm just saying that, like, we don't live in a world, because I think that Israel has a problem. This is why I say Israel is stuck in 1968, where they feel like they're surrounded by enemies on all sides, and they've got to be ready for war and attacks and blah, blah, blah. If Israel here's something I say with extreme confidence, okay? Maybe I'm wrong. If Israel gave the Golan Heights back and some group started to stage, like, attacks out of the Golan Heights, Israel would fucking demolish it. It wouldn't even be like it's not even a strategic threat. Like, people are acting like it's 1950 and there's going to be like artillery firing shells and oh my God, and what is Israel going to do? I don't think that's true anymore. I could be wrong, but I seriously don't think that's true. I think Israel could deal with it. Proactively,
I generally agree with you. I would say that a state still wants to protect itself from threats that won't annihilate it, but could still damage it, could still hurt its people. So there's still a motivation, right? Like if we knew that there was going to be some ISIS attack on the United States, we wouldn't do nothing because we was like, this isn't going to destroy us, right? And so Israel still has a desire to try to protect itself from that type of attack.
I understand what you're saying, but when I look at Israel's action since 2006, okay, we pulled out of there's disengagement from Gaza, okay, all of those were done. Only anybody that says it was for peace is lying. It was done to shore up the demographic majority of Israel. Number one, we look at the expansion of settlements in the West Bank, which is strengthening Israel's right to annex it, and it's strengthening the territorial claims they can make for any agreement. And then you look at them annexing the Golan Heights and doing settlements out there. It's territorial. I don't think that these are. I don't think there are security, because it weakens their security in some respects. Like, yeah.
This was the point I wanted to come around to. I do think it's territorial, and I think at the end of the day, Israel is going to kind of embed so many conflicts in a way that makes it impossible or near impossible to resolve through mass expansion of settlements, through continued occupation of the land with no consideration of trying to come to a deal. If that continues for a long enough period of time, then I think it's only inevitable until either the displaced people who are stateless, or different terror groups, or others who are feeling the repercussions of those types of occupations, or feeling the repercussions of that type of expansion of settlement, leads to another mass attack, leads to another October 7th, and then it leads to another wave of violence. And I think settlement is the key potential, like, lightning rods for starting another wave of violence.
Yeah, but so here's the huge problem right now that I think exists with Israel and Palestine, okay, is one side lives in reality, which is Israel. The other side lives in delusion, which is Palestine. And they both have the shared belief that continued conflict will benefit their side. Palestinians think if they keep fighting, it will help. And Israelis think if they keep fighting, it'll help. It probably does help Israel. It almost certainly is not helping Palestinians. And I think that's one of the huge contributors to both sides not really, like, the push for peace is not going to come from Israel, especially after October 7th. They're not going to push. They don't give a fuck. Also because the status quo benefits Israel. They're expanding territorial settlements. Their economy is growing. All these other Arab nations are falling like dominoes to sign up for peace deals with them. Like, yeah, they're doing fine. The Palestinians, on the other hand, have been trained to fight against Israel and struggle against the Jews for 75 fucking years. They're not going to look for peace because that's all they know is fighting. So what do you at that point? Yeah.
I would disagree with the classification of, like, the Israelis live in reality while the soy Palestinians live in reality.
Palestinians they're delusional. The Palestinian fight went from a territorial conquest back, or from territorial kicking out European settlers, which was noble. From 48 onwards, fuck it, yeah, kill those fucking Jewish settlers and the European settlers. I support it, but it's jihadist Islamist shit now. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I think it's delusional, the approach of Netanyahu's government, for example, the current administration, towards the Palestinians, and how he thought that this could basically just be the state of affairs forever. That, he could perpetuate this conflict forever, and that he could kind of, we can move these troops away from the border with the Gaza Strip. We can manage our relationship with Hamas, and we can keep this conflict going in perpetuity, and not expecting something like this to happen eventually, especially as he let his defenses down in the Gaza Strip and failed as the security candidate, as the person with the most experience in the history of the country in the position of prime minister. I do think that position of keeping this conflict forever just going on, we can live with it. I do think that is a little, what was the word you used?
Delusional?
Delusional.
Wait,
yes.
why do you think it's delusional though? Do you think Israel?
I don't think that keeping the conflict going on in perpetuity is going to keep Jews or Israelis safe. As
Okay, well, but whoa. We're not talking about keeping Jews or Israelis safe. We're talking about strengthening the country of Israel as a whole. Since 2006, whose position has...
Wait.
Yeah.
Netanyahu's candidacy and his government was based upon security. He was a security candidate. If you go look at all of his ads, it's all about keeping people safe. There's like this ad of him like at the beach, watching people play volleyball, watching everything happening, making sure everybody's safe. If that's your position...
Hold on, real quick. When I analyze political leaders and what they're doing, I'm looking at actions, not advertisements. If Netanyahu wanted more security, he'd pull all the settlers out of the West Bank and there wouldn't be any more violence between settlers and Palestinians anymore. Clearly, keeping Israeli people safe is not his priority. I think a dual priority, a big part, is territorial expansion.
Wait, no. Israeli settlers are incredibly safe. They are incredibly safe. Like, they get armed by their local governments. They get protection from the IDF. They get, like even if, like, they're doing an incursion into nominally Palestinian-controlled areas, they get protection from the IDF. Like, this... They aren't held accountable generally for their actions. Again, like, it's not, this is the idea that, like, oh, well, you know, they're accepting like Israeli losses with the settlements. No, they're not. There aren't major Palestinian attacks in the West Bank against Israeli settlers, primarily because of the money and effort that is spent to keep and perpetuate the Israeli settler project in the West Bank. It is difficult, Argonian bum.
In this part.
Would you not say that?
Just a real quick claim on
the video game.
From 2006, from 2006 onwards, here, write this down, and you can ask me whatever. From 2006 and onwards, the status quo of Israel fighting with Palestinians has been maintained. Who's benefited from 2006 onwards? Whose position is strengthened? Israel's or the Palestinians?
1 second. Sorry, I was writing the question down.
Sorry.
Say that again.
Or you can do your point first, and I'll ask you this. Go ahead.
The Israelis. Fuck. Okay, I just lost all of it. Just ask me your question again.
No, wait. Hold on. We were talking, and you were saying Netanyahu's government. He said in political ads.
Wait. Yeah. Okay, so the question was whether Palestinians or Israelis are delusional. I think there's delusion on both sides, and if somebody is voting for Netanyahu as a security candidate under the idea and supporting his coalition under the idea that keeping the conflict in perpetuity, keeping the conflict managed with the security wall, with the security...
I would argue most Palestinians are peaceful and would prefer a ceasefire. Those numbers might change immediately following like a military incursion that is displacing millions of them, but that's not indicative of like their long-term goals or wants, you know? Hey, V for Vendetta.
State and not coming to a settlement, not creating some sort of state for the Palestinians. That is what would keep the most Jews and most Israelis safe. That is what's best for them from a security standpoint. I do think that's delusional.
Okay, so then here's my question. This has more or less been the status quo for the past 15, 16, 17 years, since 2006, about whose position has improved over the last about 20 years, Israel's or Palestine's?
You mean like security-wise?
Everything-wise, just like everything.
Well, then like the Israelis, obviously.
Yeah, Israel in every size, shape, and form, right? They've made more allies. They've strengthened their relationship with other actors in the Middle East. They've expanded their settlements everywhere. Their economies continue to grow. Their relationship with the rest of the world remains, even past, you know, all of the individual conflicts, remains relatively good. Like, Israel's position has only improved. The Palestinian position has drastically fallen. Gaza Strip has become...
Who's Destiny talking to? This is Dylan Burns talking to Destiny. They're having a debate on the Israeli occupation.
Overpopulated. They're still embargoed and nobody gives a fuck about it, or blockaded, and nobody really cares that much to do anything about it. They're losing allies except for terrorist groups. Hamas is literally like, the Palestinian position has gotten more and more dire over time. Who's delusional when both sides are saying, let's keep fighting and we'll do better? only one side can be right when that's the statement of the policy of both sides, I think.
Well, okay, I think there's different ways of delusion, right? Different countries have different delusional like views of their own history, for example. Like there's different like delusional like narratives that nations have about what they did or what they can achieve or what's special about their country. So I guess when I hear like Palestinians are delusional, where like Israelis live in reality, I think we're talking about two different subjects being deluded about two separate.
I mean, I'd say deluded in every sense of the word. I would say they tend to be violent. They support radical jihad Islamists. I would say that their choices on leadership has consistently been fucking horrible. Their outlook on the war and October 7th is insane. Like, I would say in almost every sense, the average Palestinian, I know that people like to do this thing where like, oh no, it's just Hamas is bad. No, the average Palestinian is mind-fucked right now. At the very least, almost all of them in the Gaza Strip are, if for no other reason, because Hamas literally educates them with programs of like Mickey Mouse the Jew goes to like murder Goofy, the poor Hamas fucking person. Like, it's insane, the level of like insanity that exists. Not to the Palestinians' fault, by the way. The rest of the Arab nation hyped them up for fucking 70 years to fight Israel and basically all left. So I don't blame the Palestinians, but like, I think they are in a state of delusion, and that has to be addressed or brought back from the brink if any like peaceful process is ever going to be pursued, I think. Because the status quo right now, you agree, the status quo supports Israel.
Well, wait, the status quo.
Yeah, but the status quo is being constructed and maintained by Israel to serve Israel. His argument here is deeply flawed. They're not. And also, by the way, the argument that like all Palestinians are being indoctrinated into like this is not correct. They're just experiencing what the status quo is.
Supports, it depends on what your goal for an Israeli state to be, but the status quo supports Israel winning in any conflict. If any long-term conflict, as long as
the
they
first
don't
part
get
of the stream
tired,
title
then
actually
they'll
true?
win in the general.
Yeah. We went over the Sky News, a portion of the Sky News interview where the IDF spokesperson said that they stripped all the civilians down because it was too hot in the low 70s to high 60s for them to have all their clothes on. Ignore the fact that all of the IDF soldiers have all of their clothes on.
In any general conflict, yes.
Yeah, so the push has to come from the Palestinian side, and I don't know how that's going to happen right now, right?
So I think,
is it misogynistic to understand where IDF soldiers who have coerced relations with Palestinians for morale are coming from? I think that your question is incoherent. Try rephrasing.
That there has to be an acceptance that Israel is going to exist
Valhalla
in the region
Vidya?
in some shape
Honestly,
and form,
both routes
and
are
there
pretty
has
cool.
to be a deal made with Israel. I do think that is something that people have to accept.
In my first playthrough, I took the Underdark to Moonrise, and then I went back to the Mountain Pass just to see what was in there. You will be able to go back to the Mountain Pass, so if you want to go past that and then double back, you can.
Whether they like it or not, you have to live in the real world. I do think, though, that there is some sort of... I don't want to get too stuck on delusion, because I would just talk about these elected MPs are delusional. Look at the crazy stuff they're saying. Here's these fringe parties over here that have an immense amount of influence within Netanyahu's coalition, and here's the violent things they say. Here's the agriculture minister saying we can use a nuke in the Gaza Strip. I want to avoid... I feel like we're just going to go back and forth with, like, whataboutism, and I don't want to do that. Can we move on to...
Sure, yeah. But just to be clear also, yeah, when we argue about these things, I'm not looking at, like, people like to make these arguments of, like, here is what a minister said, or here is what the interior defense guy said, or here... I'm not looking at, like, statements. I'm looking at, like, what are the actions
by
of
the
the
way,
country? Yeah.
This, I feel like we've kind of avoided the whole point of this.
But it matters what the actions of the country are, especially if there is a direct correlation between what people in positions of power are advocating for and what they're actually doing, right? Like, for example, we wouldn't take the statements of North Korea about the vibrancy of its democracy at face value, but I think maybe we could take some statements that are in line with its geopolitical goals and eliminating Palestinian eliminationist rhetoric, or eliminationist rhetoric as it regards Palestinians in Israel, is what their country is currently doing. So like we can take those statements and use them to inform ourselves about just how bad the potential outcome of their actions could be.
Conversation, by the way. My position wasn't whether or not, from a security perspective, not what's best for international law, what's best for...
Is it misogynistic to have empathy for the position of IDF soldiers who have coerced relations with Palestinians for the purpose of maintaining army morale? Are you asking me if it's empathetic, if it's misogynistic to empathize with IDF soldiers who are raping Palestinians? Is that your question in blunter terms? Chris Huggy, I don't understand what you're trying to say. I'm sorry. I suppose you could phrase it like that. Yeah, I think empathizing with a rapist would probably be extraordinarily misogynistic. Yeah.
Or, you know, actually having peace and no sort of like version of like waves of violence. My original question about this was whether it was a good idea for the United States, as an advocate of the international rules-based order, to vote against resolutions that are asking for Israel to uphold.
Yes, also psychotic, and I don't know. Anyone who interacts with you should probably be armed and ready to kill you.
The international rules-based order, which basically every international law scholar acknowledges that they're
if that's an actual position you hold.
Violating.
I don't know if every single law scholar acknowledges they're violating it, but no, I don't think Israel is held.
Wait. If we're talking about settlement expansion and the illegally occupied Golan Heights, is there any international law scholar that's going to say that's legal under international
law?
Nope.
It's complicated.
Nah, the answer is just no, you don't.
It's this. All these issues are really complicated.
Wait. That's
V for Vendetta. It's really weird that you have the name V for Vendetta, because presumably you've seen or watched that piece of media, and you know that like anyone who's portrayed as a good person in that would hate you. That like the media you named yourself after fucking hates you. Oh, like, is it bad to think that maybe troops doing war rape is, you know, saying maybe they got a point? No. Yeah, of course that's bad. Yeah. Just gonna head that one off at the pass. Donate a sub to me and I will give her a $10 tip. Well, you're already subbed on riverboat.gg, Chris Huggy, so I'm not sure where are you asking for the sub? Okay. I'm moving on.
It's not a complicated question, though. Is there any international law scholar who would say that it is legal under international law to put settlements in the occupied Golan Heights? If we said this about like occupied Ukraine, this wouldn't be a question, right? If we said this about any occupied territory, it wouldn't be a question.
I know for the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, it's different. I don't think I can't venture an opinion on the Golan Heights. I would have to read specifically about that, because technically the Golan Heights was taken in 1967, right?
Yeah, 1967 and fought over in 1973.
Golan Heights was hold on, I'm trying to remember. Was the Golan Heights part of Syria proper?
Yes, it was.
From
okay,
48 onwards?
I just have trouble understanding
the Syrian Arab
issue you're
Republic,
running
and then
into.
it's like I think it was like an Egyptian Syrian like union thing that Nasser what was his name? Nasser wanted to try. It was just wacky and funky, but it was part of the Syrian Arab Republic.
Okay, let me just double check. Yeah, the Golan Heights might be different here then from the West Bank or the Gaza Strip then.
Well, yeah, it was part of a separate. Yes, it was part of a separate country. This is why I'm saying that no international law scholar would say it's legal. Now you can make the argument like I don't care if it's legal. I don't care about that international rules-based order. I think the security purposes that argument can be made. My point is that the United States is making a lot of moral stands in the world right now. A good example would be in Ukraine, and I have to talk about this a lot. And I'm very concerned that when I'm talking to people, when I'm talking to my Lebanese friends, because I know some Lebanese Ukrainian people, or I'm talking to some other people from other parts of the world that are not traditionally considered the quote-unquote West, and I'll talk to them about Ukraine. They'll be like, yeah, it's good that the United States support Ukraine. I guess it's bad the Russians invaded, but like the United States is obviously...
Well, and yeah, that's exactly it, Sweetheart's cat, right? Like the kind of the founding myth of Israel is Zionism, right? The same way one of the founding myths of America is, manifest destiny. Like it's used in a similar way, and a lot of Americans similarly internalized manifest destiny as like a go-to for American imperialism, right? From sea to shining sea, you know?
Hypocritical. Look at them violating international law here. Different. Look at them violating international law here. If there's going to be a quote-unquote night watchman or somebody that stands up for this rules-based order, which the Biden administration espouses it's standing for, it has to be able to stand with it consistently. It cannot just be like, of course I'm going to apply the rules when it comes to my enemies, but the people I give weapons directly to, no. We're not going to do reviews on their weapons usage. We're not going to do reviews on whether they're following the laws of war, which I know that State Department officials have resigned over the fact that they're not doing that. And Anthony Blinken and others have yet to indicate that they are doing that. And so that just makes me very concerned when I see the UN voting against these UN resolutions.
But it's also so weird.
I think it's going to hurt our credibility around the world.
It's possible that it might hurt our credibility. I'm not sure how much stuff related to Israel hurts our credibility around the world, as opposed to stuff related to like Ukraine, which is in a far more reasonable region of the world, as crazy as Putin is. The international law claims and the UN resolution claims relating to conflicts involving Israel, they seem to fall so hollow when it feels like nobody else around them is held to any of these standards. Like, if we pull back in a macro, here's what we're saying. Israel, you guys are violating international laws by building settlements on this occupied territory. You need to give it back to Bashar al-Assad that used chemical warfare against his own citizens over and over and over and over again. You're really bad. Like that. That's not
what the UN resolution said. The UN resolution simply said to stop settlement expansion in occupied territory, not to give it back.
Here is that tip anyway.
Yeah, but again,
that's okay,
like,
Chris Huggy.
Even to stop, okay,
but thank you for the $10 tip. I really much appreciate that.
Settlements. Like, you need to adhere to international law when the people that are boarding you clearly have no fucking concern for it whatsoever.
But this is the problem. Israel espouses to be a Western-style democracy. It often claims to be the only democracy in the Middle East. When it tells its national story, the UN resolution creating Israel, creating a home for the Jews after the horrors of the Holocaust, that's largely part of their national story. That's part of the justification for the foundation of the Zionist project, for the foundation of the Israeli state. And to use these international institutions, to use international law when it's to your advantage, but then to disregard it because the other team also isn't playing by the rules, and for us to stand with them discarding it while their team doesn't play by the rules, while we stand for the system on the international stage, it just seems horribly hypocritical, and I think it's going to hurt our image, and I think this is one of the weakness of a lot of people, and I don't hate to use the word developing countries, but I don't know how else to say it to get it across to people. It worries me when developing countries sees these flaws, or see these obvious hypocrisies in the idea of an international rules-based order.
Alice McGee, thank you for gifting a sub over on Twitch to I Made This to Watch.
We know manifest destiny is a myth, because even Destiny's wife doesn't want to manifest destiny anymore. BWA.
I've only heard rumblings of this. I personally don't care about Destiny's life, but goddamn, Paladin, that was savage. Oh my god. A murder in the dono message. Thank you for the $20 dono. I really appreciate that. Yes, Sweetheart's cat. I feel like that surf emote is literally me right now. Just oof. Shots fired, indeed.
And then they'll listen to other world leaders like Vladimir Putin, who make
also
a much
Paladin,
more cynical
for
observation
$5 more
of
you
they
can
play
be
by
in
the
this,
rules when it suits them.
game.
They don't play by the rules when it doesn't. That's how we should all play by the rules, which is what I'm getting from his commentary around the war in Gaza.
Sure, and I mean, we can examine that, but like anybody seriously looking at Israel, surrounded by a host of countries that have never given a fuck about international rules, that have never truly endorsed Resolution 242, that have had explicit statements in the past to never like even recognize Israel exists as a country, because their conflict so far has been so bad or gone so poorly, to say that Israel now needs to strictly adhere to international law and needs to strictly adhere to the rules in this area. Like, again, in terms of like morally, I can see an argument for it, but like realistically, real politics or whatever the fuck, like looking at Israel's actions and the neighbors that surround it, like it's hard for me to
for a named character.
And I don't believe. Hold on, wait, real quick. I don't believe that the United States loses credibility for that in the eyes of Putin when the U.S. is supporting Israel.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what's been going on with President Sunday. He seems like he's been picking a lot of fights on Twitter. But again, so for the record, in case any of you was like, oh, do you have thoughts on people doing drama? Generally, my answer is just going to be no, because I don't care enough about that type of stuff. For example, I know that Keffels and Xanderhall are beefing right now. I don't know what they're beefing about, and I don't care to know, because I'd rather talk about like the IDF and like anti-trans propaganda and legislation, and like I'd rather talk about that stuff, you know?
That has historically had an unbelievably unique history in the Middle East.
Wait. I'm just saying that's not what I said. I didn't say losing
you made it sound
credibility in the eyes of Putin. I'm saying that the developing
world...
No.
Losing credibility in the eyes of the rest of the world.
Hey, Monica
yes,
G.
I do think that we're losing
Happy
credibility.
Sunday.
If we're trying to say we're not like the Russians, we don't build empire, we stand for an international rules-based order, we believe that's what's best for nation states, but then disregard that order when it comes to some of our key allies like Israel, I do think that hurts the reputation of what we're supposedly trying to stand for. And I think that it is like you said, if you're just real politiquing it, then you're real politiquing it. But that's not what the Biden administration, that's not what Anthony Blinken, that's not what Jake Sullivan, that's not what the State Department is claiming to do. Henry Kissinger's dead. I mean, I don't think they're taking the
rest
real
in peace,
approach.
asshole.
Sure. I mean, I'm not arguing that like realpolitik is like a good way to approach the world, or is like a morally justifiable way to approach the world. I'm just saying that surrounded by the people that they are, I find it uncompelling to say that Israel should be forced to adhere to some particular tenet of international. I'm not even sure 100% if they're violating. Also, I still don't know 100% if that's even true.
Hey,
and I
Paladin,
don't
let's
the United
go.
States is
Telling
losing.
you, man.
Shoot, you should shoot me.
You've acknowledged in the past with the settlement.
Drop the bass. BWA.
Thank you for the $5 dono. Let's get you in here. Okay.
Are illegal, I thought.
That was before I knew anything about international law and how much of a clusterfuck it is. If you want to shoot me articles on it, I'll read it. I've got a ton of stuff up right now that I want to like read and research more relating to international law, because I don't have my opinions on here aren't that strong. It might be, for instance, that Israel is 100% acting illegally in regards to the Golan Heights. But I just like
Paladin.
On the macro, broadly speaking, I am wholly uninterested with the condemnations or encouragements of like action from Israel that is taken without other states surrounding them being involved. I'm so wholly uninterested in it. I don't think it's done in good faith. I don't think like African countries or developing world is going to look at the United States and go like, oh my God, they're so hypocritical in Israel. Let's go do Putin. Maybe we can do a third Chechen war. Like I don't think that would ever happen.
What I'm saying is that if you look at the world's rules that we're supposedly holding up, and we're holding up.
Why does Destiny's only argument I've ever heard him make is posturing power at everyone? Well, because that's, I mean, part of Destiny's main position is, if I'm going to summarize Destiny's main position, it's that he's willing to argue anything and everything, and his main point is like trying to signal dominance in that conversation, in that debate. Like he just wants to be right at all costs. He thinks that signaling power in these conversations is what makes him right, you know? Hey, Mr. J Logic. Maybe that's possibly like a messy breakdown of his thought process, but that seems to be my assessment, you know? What it do, Mr. J Logic? He's so consistent in his ability to be extremely confidently wrong. Well, honestly, Argonian Bum, in these spaces, being confidently wrong is more important than being meekly right.
Above everyone else, and we're saying these are the rules that
Which
they
is
should
why I've never been wrong about anything. I've been confidently right about everything.
follow, which is the system that, and I'm not saying specifically the system built currently, but I do believe there should be some sort of international rules-based order, which is what the Biden administration also believes. If you're going to do this, it cannot just be when the rules apply to me, I follow them. When the rules apply to them, when the rules apply to them, we enforce them. When the rules apply to me, never mind, we ignore them. And I'm not advocating. I'm just talking about the United States' position. It would not hurt the United States that tremendously to say, yes, I'm going to vote against settlement expansion. Yes, I'm going to vote against settlement expansion in the Golan Heights. I'm going to vote against continued settlement expansion here. It would not hurt us strategically. We would still probably have a very positive relationship with Israel overall, considering how much they need the United States right now. And it's not like it's impossible for the United States president to do this. Ronald Reagan did cancel F-16 shipments to Israel back in the day over its bombing campaign in Lebanon, which Reagan called a Holocaust in private conversations. So that's what I want to see more of. Because as of right now, it just looks like we refuse to pull back on Israel's actions whatsoever, even though
we've limited a lot of what's going on for the invasion of the Gaza Strip. We've condemned them for settlements in the past. I know Obama did. I think Biden might have. But I mean, like, our condemnations they ring a little hollow. It's not like we have.
For me, if there's not internal reviews about how our weapons are being spent and some sort of condition being placed upon our aid, how much leverage do you think just like dialogue with them generally is going to have on their actions?
Just dialogue? For the Gaza Strip stuff, the dialogue seems to have been incredibly successful. I don't think Israel wants to make enemies of the entire fucking world. Like, I think they want to generally remain on the good side of at least the United States. I think that's probably their goal. I just like the idea of like any real conversation happening with just Israel unilaterally just seems to be pretty hollow. Like, I know we can look at one thing right now. Like, here's one thing we can look at right now, which is like, oh, Israel should stop the settlements here, or Israel should do this or that. But like, if they end up doing some particular action and then they get attacked even more, or something like the October 7th shit, that's just going to like further serve in their mind that like, okay, well, fuck the United States, we're not going to listen to them, or fuck everybody pressuring out of this shit. We need to do what we can to defend ourselves because clearly nobody else has our interests at heart, right? You look at like the UN General Assembly and you look at the voting body of that, and you look at all the resolutions and everything against Israel. If we want to have like real conversations here, it can't be like, here's a UN condemning Israel settlement. Okay. It needs to be like it needs to be, wait, here, real quick. Let me finish the point, okay? Because we can go back and forth forever, and you can keep going back and forth if you want. I don't care about bullshit saying Israel needs to stop doing a thing unless we're involving all the parties. If we're not involving all the parties, I don't give a fuck. And I think that all of these are virtue signals. I think it's virtue signal in the actual truest sense of the word, and that it's just other countries saying, we condemn this because it feels good. But everybody knows we're not moving towards a realistic solution. Everybody knows that Israel's not going to act unilaterally against their own interest in an area where they feel like they have other terrorist groups that obviously don't give a fuck about international law. So I think that the conversations need to be real conversations between countries, between groups, with actual mediators and actual treaties being signed, not UN General Assembly resolutions condemning settlement expansion. That's how I feel. And then you can give your point on that if you want.
Okay, so hello.
That was insane.
First off, I just want to say when it comes to
just as a heads up, I love that he's like, we need real conversations between real countries, not UN conversations. Those aren't real conversations between countries. But it's just like that part of real conversations between real countries is conversation in the UN. Like, I again, the whole reason that Israel has been condemned repeatedly by the UN is due to the fact that the UN is an international body made up of like other countries who deem their actions completely unacceptable and in violation of agreed upon international law. Like I don't know, that felt like an insane rant on his part.
The settlement expansion in the Golan Heights. I don't think this is just a question about international law, and I think we kind of established this earlier, but I just wanted to make sure it's established. It's also a question of sabotaging future negotiations and making it less safe for everyone down the road, including the settlers. who are going to be putting themselves in harm's way by placing themselves in disputed territory. Disputed territory next to a civil war, disputed territory that terrorists have tried to infiltrate before, disputed territory which is a potential hot rod for conflict in the future. And so I don't think this is just a question of international law, which I do think, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment, should be upheld by the United States if we're going to claim the mantle of some sort of night watchman or encouraging a night watchman in the international system, even if it's just UN interventions. But my point is, though, I don't think it's just a question of international law when it comes to the settlement expansion. I think it's generally going to make everyone less safe in the long run. As for the international law, why would you... I mean, you kind of like said, oh, they're gonna like do a third invasion of Chechnya or something. Why is it so silly, the idea that somebody in the developing world, let's say president of Mozambique, president of wherever it is, looks towards the United States, looks towards the international system, hears them say, we should, respect sovereignty, respect everyone's international borders. We need to respect the international rules-based order, which is the terminology the United States government uses. And then will violate the rules of that order a year later, once it suits them. Will they come away with the conclusion that this is an order that we should uphold, or this is all stupid, politics?
I don't know if
cynical,
people look at it
realpolitik?
as like just like the international rules-based order. I don't think it's just like looked at in terms of like what are the actual international courts saying or whatever, because like technically the USS doesn't even submit itself to the authority of the ICC, right? I think that people are generally...
Yeah. But like, international condemnation does matter when you're talking about geopolitics. Like this is the thing. Like, he's like, well, it doesn't really matter. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter domestically if you reject the ICC. It does matter in terms of your relations with your neighboring countries, your fellow countries, the countries you have to interact with in a global, modern sense. God.
This is something that I also think is hypocritical and we need to fix.
Sure. Maybe.
I mean,
let me respond to what you said. Hold on. Whoa. Hold on. You're doing the ramble. You're talking a lot. Okay, so I'm going to speak a lot. Okay, so I don't believe that Africa aligning itself or disaligning itself with the United States has to do with whether or not we're upholding a rules-based order. Okay, I don't think right now, and I could be wrong. Maybe there are conflicts that I'm not aware of. I know that we were involved in bombing. Is it Sudan or South Sudan? I know there was at least one African country that the United States was involved in decently heavy military intervention in kind of recently. Do you know what I'm thinking of?
You could be talking Chad, maybe Somalia, maybe...
Okay, I can't remember, but just so I don't make the statement completely ignorantly, but like, relatively speaking,
Niger?
it might have been Somalia. Relatively speaking, okay, save for the greater Middle East region, right, things like Libya or Egypt or whatever, right, the United States doesn't have such heavy involvement in African affairs that they're looking at us and they go like, oh my God, the U.S. isn't upholding rules-based orders, blah, 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 blah. I think they probably have their own motivations and the reasons for supporting who they decide to do. I don't think any of these, like, decisions are going to be made or broken based on our support or lack thereof for Israel. I don't think that that's ever going to be the case.
I remember you talking...
I disagree. I think that the United States has a large degree of influence over Israeli policy, which is why Israel has spent like the last decade currying favor with American politicians and building up campaign funding apparatuses in the United States.
Talking about Donald
they wouldn't
Trump
do that if it didn't matter.
And how us sitting down with them and giving Kim Jong-un this reputational boost on the world stage was a loss for the United States geostrategically, even if we didn't really technically give them anything outside of a photo op.
Yes,
now,
that's true, Paladin. That's why I wait to give you guys insane goals until the end of the month.
Something like that can have that type of a disastrous impact
Hey,
on the image of a dictator. Do you not think that the #1 advocates for the current rules-based system,
where have you been all my life?
rules of the rules-based system, or at least ignoring when their allies violate the rules of the rules-based system, could not also have a disastrous reputational impact?
No, absolutely not. Where is North Korea on the map? North Korea's issue wasn't
Above
just
South
that
Korea,
we were...
listen.
Yeah, North Korea's issue wasn't just that we legitimized a dictator. It's that we legitimized a guy who was testing like intercontinental ballistic missiles with a potentially strengthening nuclear program right next to two of our strongest allies, right? South Korea and Japan. That was the big deal with Kim Jong-un, right? Un? That was the huge issue with us legitimizing him there at that particular point in time. It's the fact that we are doing this, and then as we fly our diplomats out, Kim is sending missiles, lobbing them right into the fucking sea, sometimes right over or right next to our allies, and Japan and South Korea is looking at us like, what the fuck are you guys doing? That's the issue with that there. It's their proximity to allies, and it's not just the fact that like, oh, it's Kim, now the United States has been weakened all over, blah, 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 blah. That is like an issue, and I agree with that. But like legitimizing Kim Jong-un, the rationale for that or the reasons for that list is a very short one that has one thing and one thing only, and that's photo op for Donald Trump. That's far different than support for Israel, which has a far more complicated and tenuous and strange history in that particular region of the world than it would for Kim Jong-un. We can find a lot more re-support Israel than we can take pictures next to Kim.
It's not just, I'm not just saying support Israel as a vague, like, you know, Biden put on like an Israeli flag over his shoulder and said, "Yay, Israel." I'm talking about specifically violations of international law that we refuse to condemn or sometimes enable.
When we say violations of international law, what are we talking about there?
We just talk about like illegal settlement expansion.
I don't even know if that is technically
dude, it's 100% illegal. We can like sit down and
dude, yes, that like he complained earlier about how Israel is like one of the most cited nations as being in like acting against international law, and he cited that, and then he's like, well, I don't know, technically building settlements is against international law. That's what they were getting cited for. The breaches in international law were about the building of settlements. God damn, dude.
And wait and sit down.
My understanding is I think there's one case right now finally that's working its way through the ICJ to determine the legality of this, but the idea of that clearly being illegal.
But the ICJ, you've already said, is not recognized by Israel, and it's specifically not recognized by Israel because of how many times they have been cited as being in violation of international law for the settlements.
I don't think that has ever been clearly stated to be illegal because everything relating to this
it has over and over again for decades.
A nation state unilaterally taking another nation state's territory after a military conflict, and then after taking that nation state unilaterally with no international body coming down and saying that yes, this is your territory, or yes, we
but that territory, most of that territory has been renounced. Not the Golan Heights, but the West Bank and the Gaza Strip have been renounced.
We're talking about the Golan Heights right now. I'm talking about this.
They haven't been renounced. What? Oh my god, dude. I'm taking brain damage from this.
This is why I'm so angry about this one in particular. I'm not that angry, but I'm.
The Security Council reaffirmed this afternoon that Israel's establishment of settlements in Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, had no legal validity, constituting a flagrant violation of international law. And that's from 2016. Yeah, they've been getting cited for it for 60 goddamn years.
I'm upset about this one in particular because it's such a clear-cut example of the violation of international law. This is why I was against when
it's not like, oh man, yeah, this is a new issue. No one's really thought about this or come to any conclusion about it. No, they've been talking about it for 60 years, longer than your parents have been alive.
And Donald Trump recognized the annexation, because the reason why previous presidents like Obama and Bush and other administrations didn't recognize the annexation is they knew it was illegal. They knew it would make the United States look bad. It knew it probably would just escalate tensions in the region, and also knew that it was giving Israel something for nothing, which is what Donald Trump did by recognizing the annexation.
I don't necessarily know if I disagree with any of those arguments, but those are all separate from the idea that it is like clearly like an illegal act. I don't know if that is
unilaterally annexing territory and then placing people on that territory or allowing your citizens to settle on that territory is an illegal act.
I don't know if allowing your citizens to settle on territory that you've conquered in a war is illegal. I know
they conquered it in a war, but they came to a 1967 agreement on territory that did not include the Gaza Strip or the West Bank. That's why it's called illegally occupied territory, the occupied territories.
Possibly moving your citizens there, I think that text might be there. But again, if this is like clearly and obviously illegal, then show me the body that's like declared it to be clear, that makes rulings like this, that just declared it to be clearly illegal. Like, I don't think the ICJ has made a ruling on this is clearly illegal, or maybe they have and I missed it. In which case I say, oh well, fuck, it is illegal, and maybe in support of international law, the United States should take a stronger stance against this. But I don't think that that's the case. Yeah, but if it is, then you just link me. Then tell me, oh, the ICJ made this ruling, and they said here. But it's not. It can't be a link to like, here's what a Yale professor said, or here's like somebody's legal opinion on this. If we're saying it's clearly illegal, like it's been ruled upon, like it's like a done deal, I'd be curious.
I googled illegal Israeli settlements. #1 results. All settlements and outposts are considered illegal under international laws as they violate the 4th Geneva Convention, which bans an occupying power from transferring its population to the area it occupies. Even on Wikipedia's Israeli settlement page, there are over 100 Israeli illegal outposts in the West Bank. Here's the United Nations Human Rights Council. Here's that 700,000 Israeli settlers, blah, 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 blah. These settlers lived illegally in 279 Israeli settlements. Like, you can, this isn't even like, oh man, I've searched for it and I can't find it. Like, all you have to do is type Israeli settlements illegal into Google and you get multiple results. I mean, like, the AP News, the international community, along with the Palestinians, considers settlement construction illegal. And this is from a story from 2023. This is the story on Israel okays plans for thousands of new settlement homes, defying White House calls for restraint. Like, he literally didn't look at anything and is just saying shit.
Would you prefer like a legal, like either like an international institution calling it illegal, or would you prefer the law itself that would be like, you cannot unilaterally annex territory, you cannot unilaterally, which one would you prefer? I mean, we have like 5 minutes left, but I can get it to you
if you want. I don't know if I can make a reading and say, well, I've read this law, now I clearly understand it. I don't know if that's the case.
Would you want me to then have like a legal expert's opinion on the law with it, or what would you want?
Well, why not just get, if it's clearly illegal, why not just like an international ruling on it?
I can look for an international ruling, but I mean, if I could find a law that is like, murder is, you cannot go up and shoot somebody without them posing some threat to you, and I have something that says like you cannot unilaterally annex territory, would that not suffice?
No, whose international law is that? Is this the ICJ, for the arm of the UN?
Okay, I'll get it to you afterwards.
Sure.
I would have.
I'm curious on this.
I don't know the
Let's say that.
legal ruling.
Let's say that.
I've never had anybody. Let me just be clear. The reason why I don't have it on hand is I've never had somebody question the international legality of the annexation of the Golan Heights to me before.
That's great, but I've also had a lot of people say this is illegal, this is illegal, this is illegal. I'm like, oh, illegal how? And I don't know. It just seems bad. Usually, people use illegal as a proxy for bad, right? Let's say, and I'm curious.